When I opened the door to my house that Tuesday afternoon, after 3 days visiting my sister Mary Ann, I heard voices that shouldn't have been there, laughter, excited shouts, the sound of objects being dragged across the hardwood floor that I had polished with my own hands for 30 years. I left my suitcase by the entrance and walked slowly toward the living room, my heart pounding so hard I felt every beat in my temples. What I saw left me paralyzed, as if someone had yanked the air from my lungs with a single blow. My daughter-in-law, Chelsea, was standing in the middle of my living room, surrounded by 5 women I had never seen in my life. She was holding up the porcelain tea set my late husband gifted me on our 20th anniversary. $50 and it's yours, she shouted with a huge smile as if she were at a street market. If you're watching this video, please subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it has reached. Everything half price, total liquidation. The women were touching my things, my memories, my personal objects, as if they were cheap merchandise at a garage sale. I saw one of them carrying my green velvet curtains, the ones I had custom made when we moved in here. Another woman was going through my books, stacking them carelessly into a cardboard box. But what really shattered me was seeing my son, Robert, my only son. He was sitting on the sofa, my sofa, with a shoebox full of bills on his lap, counting money with the same concentration he used to count his candy when he was a boy. He hadn't seen me yet. None of them had. They were all so busy pillaging my life that they didn't even notice I had arrived. I felt my legs shaking, that the world was tilting to one side. For a moment, I thought maybe I was dreaming, that it was one of those nightmares that wake you up sweating in the middle of the night. But no, this was real. As real as the scent of my favorite perfume that one of those strangers was wearing, surely because she had just bought it from the collection I kept in my dresser. What is going on here? My voice came out weaker than I would have liked, almost broken, but it was enough to make everyone freeze. Conversations abruptly stopped, hands stopped touching my things, and all eyes turned toward me. Robert looked up from his bills with a guilty expression, like a child caught stealing cookies. But Chelsea, my dear daughter-in-law, had the nerve to smile at me. A cold, calculated smile that made me feel like an intruder in my own home. "Mother-in-law, you're home earlier than expected," she said in a voice so sweet it was nauseating. "We wanted to surprise you." A surprise. She called this a surprise, selling my belongings while I was away. The unknown women looked at me uncomfortably, some already dropping the objects they had been examining. One of them, in a bright yellow dress, dropped my antique lamp onto the armchair and started backing toward the door. "A surprise?" I repeated, feeling the disbelief turn into something darker, heavier. "Selling my things is a surprise?" I walked forward, my shoes echoing on the floor that suddenly felt alien. Robert finally stood up, the cash box still in his hands. He was 35 years old, but at that moment he seemed like a stranger to me, a complete stranger with my son's face. "Mom, we can explain," he started to say, but his voice sounded hollow, without conviction. Chelsea placed a hand on his arm as if warning him to be quiet. That gesture pierced me like a knife. My son, letting himself be controlled by her. My son, choosing her over his own mother. "Then explain it," I demanded, crossing my arms over my chest. "Explain why there are strangers in my house taking things that belong to me. Explain why you are counting money from the sale of my property." The women began to sneak toward the exit, murmuring apologies that I could barely hear over the buzzing fury in my ears. Chelsea let them go without protest, her smile finally vanishing. "You see, Martha," she said, using my first name as if we were friends, as if she had any right. "Robert and I have been talking. This house is too big for one person alone. You're getting older. 62 years old is not young anymore." Every word was a slap in the face. "We thought it would be better for you to move to a smaller, more manageable place, a cozy apartment where you don't have to worry about the upkeep, about the stairs, about all these empty spaces." "And you decided for me?" I asked, my voice rising in volume. "Without consulting me, without asking me what I want?" I looked at Robert, searching for some trace of the boy I raised, of the young man who used to hug me and tell me I was the best mother in the world. "Robert, this is my house, the house where I raised you, the house your father and I built together." My voice was trembling now, emotions threatening to overwhelm me. He looked away, unable to hold my gaze. Mom, it's for your own good, he mumbled. You can't keep living alone in a place this big. What if you fall? What if something happens to you and no one is here to help you? They were excuses. I knew it immediately. Cheap excuses wrapped in false concern. We already sold several things, Chelsea intervened, as if that were something to be proud of. We raised almost $2,200. It's a good start for the deposit on a nice apartment for you. We even found a nice senior living residence that has activities and everything. A residence. They wanted to put me in a residence, get rid of me as if I were an old piece of furniture that was no longer useful. My hands clenched into fists. Get out of my house. The words came out low, dangerous. Chelsea laughed now, a short, contemptuous laugh. Martha, don't be dramatic. We're just trying to help you make the transition easier. She took a step toward me, and I saw something in her eyes I had never seen before. Something cold, calculating, greedy. Transition? I spat the word. I'm not going anywhere. This is my house. Robert finally spoke, and his words tore me apart more than anything else. Mom, you're going to have to accept it sooner or later. You can't hold on to this place forever. It's time for you to live, according to your age, according to your reality. According to my age, as if being 62 made me an invalid, incapable, someone who needed others to decide for her. The betrayal I felt at that moment was absolute. I truly wonder if you were in my place, what would you do? Would you choose to be quiet to maintain peace, or would you dare to face everything to reclaim your voice? I want to know your opinion because every story is like a candle that can light the way for someone else. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stayed sitting on my bed, the same bed where I had slept for 3 decades, watching the shadows the moon cast on the walls. Robert and Chelsea had finally left after our argument, but their words kept echoing in my head like a painful echo. It's time for you to live according to your age. As if my age were a sentence, a limitation, something that took away my right to decide over my own life. I remember when I gave Robert a set of keys to my house 2 years ago. It was after I had my gallbladder surgery. Just for emergencies, son, I told him, so you have access if something happens to me one day, and you need to get in. He hugged me tightly that day. He promised me he would always be there for me. You're the best mom in the world, he told me. And I believed him. My God, how I believed him. I never imagined those keys would become his free pass to invade my space, to plan my life without my consent, to sell my memories while I was away. I got out of bed and walked to the closet. I took out the photo box I kept on the top shelf. That green metal box with engraved flowers that my mother gave me when I got married. Inside were all the photographs of Robert. Baby Robert wrapped in a white blanket in the hospital, Robert at 5 in his first school uniform, smiling toothlessly because he had just lost his front ones. Robert at his graduation, so proud, so full of dreams. Where had that boy gotten lost? At what moment had my son, my sweet son, become someone capable of betraying me? I touched the photographs with trembling fingers, feeling the weight of all those years, of all that love I had given unconditionally. I had been a single mother for the last 10 years since my husband died of a sudden heart attack. I worked 3 jobs so Robert could finish college. I sold jewelry, pawned valuable things, skipped meals so he would never know what it was like to go hungry, and now he was paying me back like this, selling those very jewels I had sacrificed so much to keep. I realized that night that Chelsea had found my jewelry box, that carved wooden chest I kept in the second drawer of my dresser. I went to check it, my heart in my throat, empty, completely empty. The pearl earrings my grandmother bequeathed to me, the gold bracelet my husband gave me when Robert was born, the ring with the small diamond that had been my mother-in-law's. All gone, all sold to strangers who probably had no idea of the sentimental value those pieces held for me. I sank to the floor next to the dresser and cried. I cried like I hadn't cried since my husband's funeral. I cried for the betrayal, for the loss, for the horrible feeling of being completely alone in the world. If my own son was capable of doing this to me, who could I trust? I spent the whole night awake, doing a mental inventory of everything that was missing, the antique wall clock that had belonged to my father, the crystal figurines I collected since I was young, my favorite books, some signed by the authors, the porcelain dinnerware we only used at Christmas. When dawn broke, my eyes were swollen and red, but I also had clarity. I realized something fundamental as the first sunlight came through my window. This hadn't been spontaneous. It hadn't been an impulsive decision by Chelsea while I was away. This had been planned, calculated. They knew exactly when I was going to visit Marianne. They knew I would be gone for 3 days. They had waited for the perfect moment to execute their plan. I got up from the floor, washed my face with cold water, and looked at myself in the mirror. I saw a 62-year-old woman with wrinkles around her eyes and gray streaks mixed in her brown hair. But I also saw someone stronger than Robert and Chelsea thought. I saw a woman who had survived her husband's death, who had raised a son alone, who had built a life with her own hands. And that woman wasn't going to let anyone strip her of what was hers. That Wednesday morning, Robert showed up at my door. He came alone without Chelsea, and that struck me as suspicious. He immediately brought coffee and a sweet pastry from my favorite bakery, as if a breakfast could erase what he had done. "Mom, we need to talk," he said when I opened the door. His voice sounded tired, almost defeated. I let him in, but not because I had forgiven him. I let him in because I needed answers. We sat at the kitchen table, that round wooden table where we had shared thousands of meals. He couldn't look me in the eyes. He fidgeted with his coffee cup, turning it between his hands. "Mom, I know you're angry," he began. Angry. What a small word to describe what I felt. "But you have to understand that we did it thinking of you. This house is too much for you alone. The maintenance, the expenses, everything." "And who asked you to worry about that?" I asked, my voice colder than he expected. "I've maintained this house for years without your help, Robert. I pay my bills, I take care of my garden, I clean every corner. When have I ever asked you for help? When have I given you the impression that I can't handle my own life?" He stayed silent because he had no answer. I had never asked him for anything. I had never given him reasons to think I needed him to intervene. "Chelsea says it's for the best," he finally murmured. And there it was, the truth. Chelsea says, "Not I think or we believe," Chelsea says. "My son had let that woman take control of his mind, his decisions, his morals. She says we could help you better if you were in a smaller place, closer to us." Closer to them. The mere idea gave me chills. "And the jewelry?" I said, staring at him. "The jewelry you sold. Was that Chelsea's idea too?" I saw him swallow, how his face turned red. "We needed to make some quick cash for the apartment deposit," he admitted. "We thought you wouldn't notice right away, that we'd have time to explain everything." Wouldn't notice, as if I were stupid, as if I were senile. "Those jewels were worth more than $5,000, Robert," I said, my voice trembling with contained rage. "They were family heirlooms. They had sentimental value. How much did you sell them for?" He didn't answer, but his silence gave me the answer. They had sold them short, probably for a fraction of their real value. "I need you to give me the keys back," I said then. "Right now." He looked up, surprised. "Mom, don't be like this. We're just trying to take care of you." But I had already made up my mind. "The keys, Robert, or I call the police and tell them you entered my property without permission and sold my belongings." I saw fear flash across his face. He slowly took the keys out of his pocket and placed them on the table with the metallic clatter that echoed throughout the kitchen. Robert left my house that day empty-handed and with an expression of resentment I had never seen on him before, but I didn't feel relief. I felt fear, fear of what was coming next, of what Chelsea might convince him to do now that I had recovered my keys. Tell me whether you have parents, grandparents, or older family members who deserve more respect than they currently receive from their families. Alternatively, tell me if you yourself are going through a situation in which you're not appreciated as much as you truly deserve. I didn't have to wait long to find out. 2 days later, on a Friday afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened the door, expecting to see the mail carrier or perhaps my neighbor Evelyn, who sometimes came over for coffee, but it was Chelsea. Alone this time, she was wearing a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and her lips were painted a dark pink that gave her a predatory look. She was smiling, but her eyes were hard as stones. "Martha, we need to talk like adults," she said, pushing the door open before I could close it. She walked into my house as if it were hers, her heels echoing on the floor with a rhythm that set my nerves on edge. "Look, I understand you're upset, but I think you're being selfish." Selfish? I was the selfish one for not wanting my house stolen? You don't understand anything, I replied, closing the door and following her into the living room. She sat on my sofa uninvited, crossing her legs as if she were in her own living room. Robert is my only son. This house is all I have. You have no right to come in here and decide what to do with my life. Chelsea laughed now, a short, contemptuous laugh. Your only son, exactly, and that son has a family now, Martha. He has a wife, he has plans, dreams, needs, and you are standing in the way of all of that with your attachment to this old, empty house. Every word was a poisoned dart, designed to hurt me exactly where it hurt the most. I'm not standing in the way of anything, I said, feeling the rage begin to boil in my chest. You are the ones intruding in my life. I never asked you to help me. I never asked you to worry about my house or my future. I was perfectly fine before you showed up. I saw her eyes narrow, her jaw tighten. I had hit a nerve. Do you know what your problem is, Martha? She said, leaning forward. That you can't accept that you are no longer needed. Robert doesn't need you anymore. He grew up. He has his own life, but you keep clinging to him like a small child. It's pathetic. Her words hit me like punches. Pathetic. She called my mother's love pathetic. Get out of my house, I said, my voice trembling not with fear but with a fury I had never felt before. Right now, before I do something I regret. But Chelsea reclined on the sofa as if she had all the time in the world. Okay, Martha, what are you going to do? Call the police? Tell them your daughter-in-law came to visit you and spoke plainly? Please. Then she said something that chilled my blood. Robert and I already spoke to a lawyer about your mental capacity, about how you've been acting erratic lately, forgetful, about leaving the door unlocked, about forgetting to turn off the stove. Lies. They were all lies. But the way she said it, with such confidence, scared me. A couple more witnesses, a couple of medical evaluations, and we could get a judge to declare you need a legal guardian. I froze. She was threatening me. Was she really threatening to take away my autonomy, to have me declared incompetent? You wouldn't do that, I whispered. But even as I said it, I knew she would. I saw the determination in her eyes, the absolute coldness with which she looked at me. To her, I was just an obstacle, a problem that needed to be eliminated. Try me, she said, standing up. Sign the house papers voluntarily. Agree to move to a place appropriate for someone your age, and we can all move forward smoothly. Or resist, and I'll have Robert declare you incompetent. You choose, mother-in-law. The way she said that last word with such contempt, such mockery, made me nauseous. Before I could answer, before I could even process the magnitude of what she was telling me, she turned around and walked toward the door. You have 1 week to decide, she said without looking at me. After that, we take legal action, and believe me, Martha, when we start, we won't stop until this house is ours. Ours. Not Robert's, ours. The door closed behind her, and I was left standing in the middle of my living room, trembling from head to toe. My legs gave out, and I fell to my knees on the carpet. That Persian rug I had bought at an antique market 20 years ago. The tears began to fall uncontrollably. They weren't just tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of impotence, of absolute terror at what I was facing. Chelsea was willing to destroy me, to declare me crazy, incapable, senile, just to get my property. And the worst thing of all was that she had my son on her side. Robert, my own son, was willing to betray me that way. How had it come to this? How had I raised a man capable of doing this to his own mother? I crawled to the phone, my hands shaking so much I could barely dial. I called Marianne, my sister. I needed to hear a friendly voice. I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't exaggerating. She answered on the third ring. Martha, what's wrong? Are you okay? And then my voice broke. I told her everything. The sale of my things, Chelsea's threats, the plan to declare me incompetent. Marianne was furious. That woman is a demon, she said, and Robert is a coward for allowing it. Martha, you have to protect yourself. You have to get legal help before it's too late. She was right, I knew it, but the idea of having to fight legally against my own son broke my heart into pieces. I don't know if I can do it, I whispered. He's my son, Marianne. He's my baby. Your baby is trying to steal your house and your freedom, Marianne replied harshly. Wake up, Martha. This is not a game. This is your life, your future. If you don't defend yourself now, you're going to lose everything. Her words were like a bucket of cold water. She was right. I couldn't keep being passive. I couldn't keep waiting for Robert to come to his senses. I had to act. That night, I searched through my old contacts. I remembered Andrew, a lawyer who had been a friend of my husband's. He had come to the funeral, had offered his help if I ever needed it. I dialed his number with trembling fingers. He answered after several rings. "Martha, is that you?" His voice sounded surprised but warm. I explained my situation, trying to stay calm, trying not to sound hysterical. There was a long silence after I finished speaking. Then Andrew said something that made me feel hope for the first time in days. "Martha, I need you to come to my office tomorrow first thing in the morning. There's something you need to know about your property, something we discovered 2 months ago." My heart started beating faster. "What is it?" I asked. "It's better if we discuss it in person," he replied. "But I'll tell you this much. Robert already tried to do something with your house before, and it wasn't legal." I didn't sleep that night. Andrew's words echoed in my head over and over. Robert already tried to do something with your house before, and it wasn't legal. What did that mean? What had my son done behind my back? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Chelsea's face, that cold, calculating smile, that veiled threat to take everything away from me. I got up before dawn, got ready with trembling hands, and waited for 8 a.m. to leave for Andrew's office. His office was downtown in an old building with marble floors and high windows. The receptionist immediately led me in. Andrew was waiting for me behind his desk with a manila folder in front of him. His brow was furrowed, and that scared me more than anything. I had known him for years. He had always been a cheerful, optimistic man. Seeing him so serious made me fear the worst. "Martha, sit down," he said, pointing to the chair across from his desk. I sat down, clutching my purse as if it were a lifeline. "I'm going to be direct with you because there's no time to waste. 2 months ago, your son Robert came to my office with documents. He wanted to transfer the ownership of your house to his name." I felt as if I had been punched in the stomach. The air rushed out of my lungs. "What?" I could barely whisper. Andrew nodded. His expression was somber. "He brought papers that you had supposedly signed, given him power of attorney over your assets. Documents that said you had voluntarily requested to transfer the property to him due to your advanced age and difficulties maintaining the house." My hands began to tremble uncontrollably. "I never signed any of that. Never. Andrew, you have to believe me." "I believe you," he said quickly, raising a hand. "That's why I rejected the process. Something didn't add up. I know your signature, Martha. I've seen it on your husband's life insurance documents, on will papers. The signature on those documents was not yours. It was forged, and not very well, I might add." I brought my hands to my mouth, feeling like I was going to be sick. My son had tried to forge my signature. My own son had tried to steal my house using fake documents. "I told Robert I couldn't process those papers," Andrew continued, "that I needed you to come in person with identification to confirm that you really wanted to make that transfer. He got very nervous. He said to forget it, that it had been a misunderstanding, and he left the office quickly." Andrew opened the folder and took out copies of the documents. "I kept copies, of course. It's standard procedure when I suspect fraud." I took the papers with trembling hands. There it was. My name, written in a handwriting that resembled mine, but clearly wasn't. The date was 2 months ago, right after Robert and Chelsea had come over for dinner. I remembered that night. They had been so kind, so attentive. Chelsea had cooked my favorite dish. Robert had hugged me and told me how much he loved me, and all that time, they had already tried to steal my property. "There's more," Andrew said, and my heart sank even further. How could there be more? "I did some investigation after your call last night. I called some contacts. Martha, your daughter-in-law Chelsea has significant debt. We are talking about over $40,000. I stared at him, trying to process that information. $40,000? From what? "Credit cards mainly," Andrew explained, "but I also discovered something interesting. She has an online gambling addiction. She's been betting for years apparently, losing much more than she wins. Robert probably doesn't even know half the debt she has accumulated." Everything began to make sense now. The urgency, the desperation, the cruelty. It wasn't just about wanting my house. They needed my house. "Creditors are pressuring her," he continued. "I've seen cases like this before. Desperate people do desperate things, and your house, Martha, is worth approximately $350,000, according to the last municipal appraisal." It's a perfect solution for their problems. If they get you to sign the transfer, or worse, if a judge declares you incompetent and gives Robert legal guardianship over you, they could sell the house and keep all the money. I felt dizzy. The room started to spin. I need water, I mumbled. Andrew quickly got up and brought me a glass of cold water. I drank slowly, trying to calm my churning stomach, trying to process all this information. My son had betrayed me for money, for his wife's debts, for pure and simple greed. What can I do? I finally asked, my voice sounding defeated even to my own ears. Andrew sat on the edge of his desk, looking at me with a mixture of compassion and determination. First, we need to protect your property legally. We are going to draw up a living will that clearly specifies your wishes. We are going to document that you are in full possession of your mental faculties. I'm going to refer you to a doctor for a complete evaluation to prove you are perfectly capable of making your own decisions. Second, he continued, we need evidence of what they have been doing. The unauthorized sales of your belongings, Chelsea's threats, everything. Do you have any proof, text messages, emails, anything? I shook my head, feeling stupid. No, everything has been in person. I have nothing. Andrew thought for a moment. Any witnesses? Someone who saw the sale of your things? Then I remembered. Evelyn, I said suddenly. My neighbor Evelyn. She was in her garden when I arrived and found the sale. She saw me come in. She saw all those women leaving with my things. She even came over later that night to ask if I was okay. Andrew nodded, taking notes. Perfect. I need you to talk to her. Ask her if she would be willing to testify about what she saw. We also need to recover what we can of your belongings. Do you know who bought your things? I don't know any of those women, I admitted. But Robert must have some record, right? If he was selling things, he must have kept contact information. Andrew leaned forward. This is where we get smart, Martha. You're going to have to pretend. You're going to have to make Robert think you're considering his offer to move, that you're tired of fighting. We need him to let down his guard so we can gather more evidence. The idea turned my stomach. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can pretend with my own son. Andrew took my hand, his expression serious. Martha, listen to me carefully. Your son is trying to steal your house. His wife threatened to declare you incompetent. This is not a game. This is fraud. It's elder abuse. It's financial manipulation. If we don't act fast and smartly, you're going to lose everything. Your house, your autonomy, your dignity, everything. He was right. I knew it. But the idea of having to lie to Robert, of having to manipulate him in the same way he had manipulated me, made me feel dirty. What if they realize? I asked. What if Chelsea realizes I'm acting? Andrew shook his head. She's so sure she has won, so confident in her plan that she won't suspect. Arrogance is her weak spot, Martha. We're going to use it against her. I left Andrew's office 2 hours later with a plan that terrified me, but one I knew was necessary. I had copies of the forged documents. I had a lawyer backing me up, and I had a mission to make Robert and Chelsea believe they had won while I gathered all the necessary evidence to expose them. On Monday morning, I dialed Robert's number, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I had practiced what I was going to say in front of the mirror all the morning before, trying to sound tired, defeated, convinced. I had to make him believe I had finally given up. Mom, he answered on the third ring. His voice sounded cautious, as if he expected another fight. Robert, I need to talk to you, I said, putting all the weariness I genuinely felt into my voice. About the house, about everything. There was a long pause. I could hear voices in the background, probably Chelsea asking who was calling. What do you mean? He finally asked. I mean, maybe you were right. Maybe this house is too much for me. Maybe I'm being stubborn for nothing. I could hear the change in his tone immediately. The caution turned into something softer, almost triumphant. Mom, I'm glad you're seeing things clearly. I knew you would eventually understand. I bit my tongue not to reply the way I really wanted to. I'd like you to come over this afternoon, I continued, to talk about the details, about how the move would be, where I would go, all of that. Sure, Mom, of course, I'll be there at 3. Does that work for you? I agreed and hung up the phone, my hands shaking. I had taken the first step. Now came the hard part. I immediately called Evelyn, my neighbor. She'd been an angel throughout this entire nightmare, coming to see me, offering me tea and company when I needed it most. I explained my plan and what I needed from her. Of course I'll help you, Martha, she said without hesitation. What they did is unforgivable. Count on me. I also called Andrew, who gave me specific instructions. Let them talk, let them relax, let them feel secure. Ask questions about the money, about the debts, about everything they sold. The more they confess, thinking they've already won, the better for us. He explained that he had discreetly hired a technician who would come to install hidden cameras in my living room. At 1 p.m., a young man arrived at my door with a toolbox, posing as an internet technician. In reality, he spent 30 minutes installing small cameras in strategic locations, one on the bookshelf, another in the wall clock, a third hidden in a decorative plant. Everything will be recording in high definition, he explained, and the audio is crystal clear. Just act natural and let them talk. When Robert arrived at 3, he brought Chelsea with him. Of course he did. She wasn't going to let him handle this alone. Not when they were so close to getting what they wanted. I forced myself to smile when I opened the door. Come in, please. They sat on the sofa, both looking more relaxed than I'd seen them in weeks. Chelsea even smiled at me, a smile that didn't reach her eyes but that tried to look friendly. Mom, we're so happy you made this decision, Robert began. You're going to see that it's for the best. We found a beautiful one-bedroom apartment with a small balcony. It has security. There's a nurse on call, and it's only 20 minutes from our house. 20 minutes from their house. How convenient for them to be able to control me. Sounds good, I said, keeping my voice neutral. But I do have some questions about the money. I saw Chelsea and Robert exchange glances. What kind of questions? Chelsea asked. Her voice was still sweet, but with an edge of caution. Well, I need to know exactly how much you raised from the sale of my things and what you're going to do with the money from the house when you sell it. Robert cleared his throat. Well, so far we've raised about $2,200 from the sales. We're keeping that money for your move, to buy new things you'll need in the apartment. A lie. I knew it was a lie. They had sold jewelry worth much more than that. And my jewelry? I asked. The jewels that were in my dresser, how much did you sell those for? I saw Chelsea's face tighten slightly. $200, she said quickly. They were old pieces, Martha. They weren't worth much in the current market. More lies. Those jewels were worth at least $5,000, probably more. I understand, I said, pretending to believe them. And the house, how much do you think you can get for it? Now Robert leaned forward, his eyes shining with excitement. A real estate agent told us we could easily get $350,000, maybe more if we fix it up a bit before selling it. $350,000, a fortune for someone with $40,000 in debt. And that money would be for me? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Chelsea laughed, a laugh that sounded fake even to my trained ears. Well, mother-in-law, you have to be realistic. The apartment costs money, your upkeep costs money, medical expenses at your age are significant. We would be managing that money for you, of course, to make sure it lasts, and that you are well cared for. Managing it for me, and they wanted to control every cent. But some of it would be left over for you, right? I insisted, needing them to say it out loud. I mean, after all the expenses, some money would be left over. It would be fair for you to keep a portion, considering all the work you're doing for me. I saw Chelsea's eyes light up. She had taken the bait. Well, yes, she admitted, trying to sound modest. It would be fair to receive compensation for all the time and effort we are investing in this. Maybe 30%, no more. 30% more than $100,000. And I knew that if I gave them the chance, they would keep much more than that, probably all of it. In fact, Chelsea continued, now speaking faster, more animated, we have some debts we need to resolve. Robert's business stuff, you know. It would be a great help if we could use part of the sale money to settle those situations first. That way, we would be freer to take better care of you. There was the confession I needed. How much do you owe? I asked, playing innocent. Robert looked uncomfortably at Chelsea, but she kept talking. You know, it's not much. About $35,000. Business loans, you know, nothing to worry about. She lied about the amount, of course. Andrew had told me they owed over $40,000. But the fact that they admitted it, that they admitted they needed my money to pay their debts, was pure gold. I see, I said slowly. So basically, you need to sell my house to pay your debts. The atmosphere in the room changed immediately. Chelsea realized too late that she had said too much. No, it's not like that, Martha. She tried to rectify it. It's just that since the house is going to be sold anyway, it makes sense to resolve some financial matters at the same time. It's practical. Practical, I repeated. How was it practical to sell my things while I was traveling? How was it practical to try to transfer my house to Robert's name without my knowledge? I saw Robert's face turn pale. How do you know? He dropped abruptly, realizing he had just confessed. Chelsea stood up quickly. Martha, I don't know what they've told you, but that was a misunderstanding. Robert was just exploring options, trying to prepare for the future. But I also stood up, and all my acting vanished. The rage I had been holding back for days finally surfaced. It wasn't a misunderstanding, I said, my voice cold as ice. It was attempted fraud, forgery of documents, and I have it all documented, including this conversation where you both admitted you need to sell my house to pay for Chelsea's gambling debts. I watched as the color completely disappeared from Chelsea's face. The silence that followed was deafening. Chelsea looked at me with wide eyes, her mouth forming at a small O of surprise. Robert had also stood up, looking around the room as if he could suddenly see the hidden cameras that had been recording everything this whole time. Mom, what are you saying? His voice sounded strangled, desperate. I'm saying I know everything, I replied, maintaining my firm posture, though inside I was shaking. I know about the fake documents you took to Andrew's office 2 months ago. I know about Chelsea's debts. The $40,000 she owes, not 35. I know about her online gambling addiction, and now I have your confession recorded that you plan to use the money from my house to solve your financial problems. Chelsea regained her composure faster than I expected. Her face transformed, the mask of the sweet daughter-in-law completely falling away to reveal something much uglier underneath. You are a paranoid old woman, she spat. Recording us? Seriously, who do you think you are, madame? She took a threatening step toward me. No one is going to believe you. Everyone is going to think you're senile, that you're making things up. I have friends, witnesses who can say you've been acting strange. Witnesses? I asked, feeling a spark of fear, but forcing myself not to show it. Are you referring to the women who bought my things? Because I have witnesses too, neighbors who saw them taking my belongings. Evelyn, who saw the entire illegal sale from her window. And I have Andrew, a respected lawyer, who can testify about your attempt at fraud. I saw something dangerous cross Chelsea's eyes. Robert, do something, and she ordered my son as if he were her pet. And to my horror, Robert took a step toward me. Mom, you have to understand that you don't have a choice here. We've already set everything in motion. We've already talked to doctors about your mental evaluation. We already have lawyers prepared. If you don't cooperate voluntarily, we're going to do it by force. My own son was threatening me, the baby I had carried in my arms, the child I had comforted after nightmares, the young man who had cried on my shoulder when his father died. By force, I repeated, my voice cracking despite my efforts to keep it firm. Robert, are you listening to yourself? Are you threatening your own mother? I saw something in his eyes, a flicker of guilt, but Chelsea placed a hand on his arm, and that flicker disappeared. It's not a threat, Mom. It's reality. You're too old to live alone. It's dangerous. Any judge will see it that way. Then Chelsea pulled out her phone. In fact, I think we should call someone right now. Martha is clearly having a paranoid episode, accusing us of things ridiculous, talking about recordings that probably don't exist. This is exactly the type of erratic behavior we've been documenting. She started dialing, and panic flooded me. Who was she calling? Social services? A psychiatric hospital? But before she could complete the call, the doorbell rang. The three of us froze. I wasn't expecting anyone else. Chelsea lowered her phone, looking at me suspiciously. Are you expecting company? I shook my head, but I walked toward the door, grateful for the interruption. When I opened it, I found Evelyn standing there with a serious expression, and behind her, her husband Ismail, a tall, burly man who worked as a security guard. Martha, we heard loud voices, Evelyn said, looking over my shoulder toward where Robert and Chelsea were. Is everything all right? It was part of the plan we had discussed. If things got dangerous, she would intervene. Everything is fine, I lied, but Evelyn was already stepping in with Ismail right behind her. Chelsea looked at them furiously. "This is a private family conversation," Chelsea said in an icy voice. "You have no right to be here." But Evelyn didn't flinch. "I have every right. I am a witness to what you did a few days ago. I saw you selling Martha's belongings without her permission. I saw all those women leaving this house with things that didn't belong to them, and I'm willing to testify about that in court if necessary." Robert's face turned red. "You don't know what you're talking about. Those things were sold with my mother's permission." But Ismail intervened then, his voice deep and calm. "Martha wasn't here that day. She came back from her trip and was as shocked as all the other neighbors. I saw you too. Everyone on the block saw you, and we all thought it was strange that you would hold a sale without Martha being present." Chelsea looked between all of us, and I could see the panic starting to seep into her expression. "This is ridiculous, Robert. Let's go. We don't have to stay here and listen to these absurd accusations." But before they could move, my phone rang. It was Andrew. I answered with trembling hands. "Martha, how is everything going? Do you need me to come over?" His voice sounded concerned. "Yes," I said simply. I think it would be good if you came." I hung up and looked at Robert and Chelsea. "My lawyer is on his way, and he's bringing all the documentation, the fake documents you tried to use, the investigation into Chelsea's debts, everything." I watched as the reality of the situation finally hit Robert. His face crumpled, the arrogant confidence vanishing to leave only fear. "Mom, wait," he began, but Chelsea cut him off. "Don't say anything else," she warned him. "Not without a lawyer present." But the damage was already done. They had already confessed too much, already revealed too much in front of the cameras and in front of witnesses. Chelsea knew it. I could see it in the way her eyes darted frantically, looking for an exit. "Do you know what the saddest thing about all of this is?" I said, looking Robert directly in the eyes. "That if you had come to me with honesty, if you had told me you had financial problems, that you needed help, I would have done everything I could to help you, because you are my son, because I love you. But instead, you chose to lie to me, to steal from me, to betray me in the worst possible way." I saw tears forming in Robert's eyes, but before he could answer, Chelsea grabbed his arm. "Let's go, now." She started dragging him toward the door, but Evelyn and Ismail didn't move, effectively blocking the exit. "I think you should wait for the lawyer to arrive," Ismail said calmly, "so all of this can be cleared up once and for all." "You have no right to detain us," Chelsea said, her voice rising in pitch. "This is kidnapping. I'm calling the police." She pulled out her phone again, but this time it was Evelyn who spoke. "Go ahead, call them. I'm sure they'll be interested in hearing about the illegal sale of stolen property, about the attempted fraud with fake documents, about the threats you made to Martha a few days ago about declaring her incompetent." Chelsea froze. "How do you know about that?" Evelyn smiled, a small but triumphant smile. "The walls are thin, dear, and my kitchen window looks right out onto Martha's living room. I heard every word of your little threat the other day. Every single word." Chelsea's face lost all its color. She had completely underestimated the situation. She had believed she had everything under control, that no one was paying attention. At that moment, the door knocked again. Ismail moved to open it, revealing Andrew with his briefcase in hand, but he wasn't alone. Behind him were two uniformed police officers. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't planned this. I hadn't asked him to bring police. Andrew looked at me and nodded slightly, as if telling me to trust him. "Good afternoon," said one of the officers, an older man with gray hair. "We received a call about possible property fraud and elder abuse. Is this the residence of Martha Castellanos?" I nodded, my voice caught in my throat. Andrew stepped forward. "Officer, I am Andrew Ramirez, a legal counsel for Mrs. Castellanos. I have documentation that demonstrates attempted fraud by her son and daughter-in-law." The officer looked at Robert and Chelsea, then at me, assessing the situation with experienced eyes. "Can someone explain to me exactly what is going on here?" His partner, a younger officer, had already taken out a notepad and was taking notes. Andrew opened his briefcase and began pulling out documents, arranging them on my coffee table with precise, deliberate movements. "Officer, my client is the victim of a systematic attempt at fraud and illegal appropriation of assets. 2 months ago, her son, Robert Castellanos, attempted to transfer the ownership of this house to his name using documents with a forged signature. I have copies of those documents here." He extended the papers toward the officer, who took them and began to examine them carefully, Robert took a step back as if he wanted to disappear into the walls. "It was a mistake," he mumbled. "I didn't understand the legal process properly." But the officer looked up at him with a severe expression. "A mistake, sir. Falsifying someone's signature on property transfer documents is not a mistake. It is a federal crime." The words fell onto the room like heavy stones. Chelsea tried to intervene, her voice taking on an almost hysterical tone. "This is a ridiculous misunderstanding. My mother-in-law is confused. She has memory problems. Sometimes she doesn't remember what she has signed and what she hasn't." But Andrew was prepared for that, too. "Officer, I have here a recent medical evaluation of Mrs. Castellanos, performed 2 days ago by Dr. Henry Morales, a certified neurologist. It confirms that she is in full possession of her mental faculties with no signs of dementia, Alzheimer's, or any other condition that affects her capacity to make decisions." I watched as Chelsea's jaw tightened. Her entire plan was crumbling before her eyes. "Furthermore," Andrew continued, clearly enjoying this moment, "I have video and audio recordings from approximately 30 minutes ago where both Mr. Castellanos and Mrs. Chelsea Marquez admit to having sold my client's belongings without her authorization and confess that they needed the money from the sale of this property to pay personal gambling debts." The younger officer stopped writing and looked up abruptly. "Recordings? We have permission from Mrs. Castellanos to review those recordings?" I nodded immediately. "Yes, officer, this is my house, and I authorize the recordings." Andrew took a tablet from his briefcase and turned it on. "It's all here, 15 minutes of very clear confessions." While Andrew prepared the video, the older officer addressed Robert and Chelsea. "Mr. Castellanos, Mrs. Marquez, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, one will be assigned to you." He was reading them their rights. He was really reading them their Miranda rights. My son was going to be arrested. "Wait!" Robert shouted, panic evident in his voice. "You don't have to arrest us. We can give everything back. We can fix this." But Chelsea grabbed his arm tightly. "Robert, shut up. Don't say anything else. This is a trap. Your mother is setting a trap for you." I looked at her in disbelief. Even now, even with the evidence piling up against them, she tried to make me look like the villain. "A trap?" I repeated, feeling the rage boil again in my chest. "I set a trap for you? You entered my house without permission, sold my things, tried to steal my property, threatened to declare me crazy to take my assets. And I am the one setting traps?" My voice had risen, years of pain and betrayal finally pouring out. The officer finished watching the recordings, his expression increasingly serious. "Mrs. Marquez, in this video, you clearly admit that you need to sell Mrs. Castellanos' property to pay for personal debts of $35,000. You also admit that you plan to manage the sale money for her, keeping 30%. Is this correct?" Chelsea didn't answer, her face turned into a stone mask. "Also," Andrew added, pulling out more document, "I have here records of Mrs. Marquez's actual debts. They are not $35,000 as she claimed. They are $42,800 spread across 6 different credit cards and 3 online gambling sites. All are in default. All have active collection orders." He extended the papers to the officer, who reviewed them with an increasingly somber expression. "How did you get that?" as Chelsea hissed, looking at Andrew with pure hatred. "That's private information. You had no right." Andrew smiled coldly. "Public records of collection lawsuits are exactly that. Public. Anyone can access them. And you, Mrs. Marquez, have 3 active collection lawsuits against you. That is not private information. It is judicial information." Then Evelyn spoke, her voice clear and firm. "Officer, I am also a witness to the illegal sale they conducted a week ago. I saw multiple people leaving this house with objects that belonged to Martha. Curtains, books, lamps, decorative figurines. Martha was not present. She was visiting her sister in another city. When she returned and saw what was happening, she was devastated." Ismail nodded alongside her. "I saw it too. All the neighbors on this block saw it. It was very obvious that something illegal was happening." The older officer closed his notepad with a decisive motion. "Mr. Castellanos, Mrs. Marquez, I need both of you to come with us to the station to make some statements." It wasn't a question, it was an order. Robert looked like he was going to faint. His skin had taken on a greenish hue and he was sweating profusely. Officer, please, she's my mother. I didn't mean to hurt her. We were just trying to help. Help? The word left my mouth before I could stop it. Robert, you forged my signature. You sold your father's jewelry, the ones he gave me with so much love. You turned my house into a marketplace while I was gone. You threatened to declare me crazy to take my property, and you dare to say you were trying to help? Tears were streaming down my face now, years of pain and betrayal finally spilling out. Your father would be rolling in his grave if he knew what you've done. I continued, my voice breaking. He worked so hard to buy this house, to give us a safe home. And you were willing to take it away from me, to leave me with nothing, just to pay your wife's gambling debts. Where is the man I raised? Where is my son? Robert burst into sobbing tears, deep sobs that shook his entire body. I'm sorry, Mom, he cried. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened to me. Chelsea said it was the only way. She said we were going to lose everything if we didn't get the money fast. She said the collectors were going to come after us. I was so scared. But even as he spoke, Chelsea gave him a sharp elbow in the ribs, trying to silence him. It was too late. He had already admitted too much in front of the officers. Mr. Castellanos, said the younger officer, are you saying your wife pressured you into committing these acts? Robert nodded miserably. She said my mother didn't need such a big house, that it was a waste, that we could solve all our problems if we simply convinced Mom to move to a smaller place. At first I didn't want to, but she kept insisting, saying Mom would be better off that way, safer. You're a coward, Chelsea spat at him. A pathetic coward who can't even defend his own wife. She turned to the officers, her face transformed into a victim's mask. This was all his idea. I just followed his instructions. I'm an obedient waggy. How was I supposed to know what he was doing was illegal? But no one believed her. The evidence was too clear. Her own words on video, too damning. The older officer sighed, clearly tired of all the drama. Mr. Castellanos, Mrs. Marquez, you are under arrest for attempted fraud, forgery of documents, illegal sale of stolen property, and coercion threats. You have the right to remain silent. As he recited their rights again, the young officer pulled out the handcuffs. Seeing those shining metal handcuffs approach my son's wrists was one of the most painful moments of my life. Oh, I whispered. Officer, is this really necessary? But Andrew placed a hand on my shoulder. Martha, this has to happen. They have to face the consequences of their actions. It's the only way. He was right. I knew it, but that didn't make it any easier to watch my son being handcuffed like a common criminal. Chelsea, of course, fought, screamed, cursed. She tried to wriggle free when the officer attempted to handcuff her. This is police abuse, she yelled. Brutality, I'm going to sue you. I'm going to sue all of you. But her threat sounded hollow, desperate. The officer finally managed to handcuff her and guided her toward the door. Robert walked ahead, his head bowed, tears still running down his face. He turned around once before leaving, looking at me with pleading eyes. Mom, please, he said. Please don't let them do this. I'm still your son. And that was the part that hurt the most, because he was right. He was still my son. Despite everything he had done, despite all the betrayal and pain, he was still the baby I had carried in my arms 35 years ago. But I also knew that if I didn't let him face the consequences now, he would never learn. He would never change. When the door closed behind the officers, taking Robert and Chelsea away, I collapsed literally. My legs gave out and I fell to my knees on the floor of my own living room, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. Evelyn knelt beside me immediately, wrapping her arms around me, letting me cry on her shoulder like a small child. It's over, Martha, it's over. You did the right thing, but it didn't feel right. It felt like I had betrayed my own son, as if I had failed as a mother in some fundamental way. What had I done wrong? Where had I failed in raising him, that he ended up becoming someone capable of this? Andrew sat on the sofa, patiently waiting for me to calm down. Ismail stayed near the door, giving me space, but ready to help if I needed it. It took me several minutes to be able to breathe normally again. Evelyn helped me stand up and guided me to the sofa. I felt empty, as if someone had taken everything out of my core and left me as just a shell. What happens now? I finally asked, my voice hoarse from crying so much. Andrew leaned forward, his hands clasped in front of him. Now they face formal charges, he explained. The attempted fraud with forged documents is a felony. The unauthorized sale of stolen property also. The threats of coercion to gain control of your assets add more charges. Depending on how the prosecutor proceeds, they could face between 2 and 5 years in prison each. 5 years. My son could go to prison for 5 years. But, Andrew continued, since it's Robert's first offense, and considering he was clearly manipulated by Chelsea, it's possible they will offer him a plea deal. Probably probation, community service, financial restitution. Chelsea, on the other hand, has more problems. The gambling debts, the history of manipulative behavior, the fact that she was clearly the main instigator. The prosecutor will likely be tougher on her. And my things? I asked. The jewelry, the furniture, everything they sold. Can I get them back? Andrew nodded. The officers are going to track down the buyers using the information Robert has to provide. Legal menti, since the things were sold without your consent. The buyers have to return them or face charges of receiving stolen property. Most will choose to return them. For the things that can no longer be recovered, Robert and Chelsea will have to pay you restitution. Evelyn squeezed my hand. You're going to get your life back, Martha. You're going to be okay. I wanted to believe her, but at that moment, everything felt broken beyond any repair. I spent the next few hours giving my formal statement to the officers who returned to take it. I told them everything from the beginning. The discovery of the illegal sale, Chelsea's threats, the previous attempt at fraud, everything. The following months were a haze of legal activity. Andrew kept me informed of every development. Robert and Chelsea were released on bail after 48 hours in custody. Robert's bail was paid by his in-laws, Chelsea's parents, who apparently had no idea of the debt their daughter had accumulated. Chelsea's bail was higher and took longer to secure the money. A week after the arrest, I received a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, but something made me pick up the phone. It was Robert. His voice sounded shattered, empty. Mom, I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I need you to know something. I waited in silence, not knowing what to say. Chelsea and I are divorcing. Well, I am divorcing her. I sat down heavily in the nearest chair. What? Robert sighed, a long, weary sound. At the police station, after they separated us for interrogation, she tried to put all the blame on me. She told the detectives that I had forced her to do everything, that I had threatened her if she didn't help me. She completely lied, Mom. And when I found out, I finally saw who she really was. During these days in jail, I had a lot of time to think, he continued, about how I got here, about all the decisions I made, and I realized that Chelsea has been manipulating me for years, even before we got married. Small lies that grew, slowly controlling me, isolating me from you, from my friends, making me believe that you were the problem, that you were the one preventing us from being happy. I felt a mixture of emotions. Part of me wanted to yell at him that this didn't excuse what he had done. Another part felt relieved that he was finally seeing the truth. Robert, I said carefully, what Chelsea did doesn't change what you did. You forged my signature. You sold your father's jewelry. You threatened me. Those were your decisions. I know, his voice broke. I know, Mom, and I'm going to have to live with that for the rest of my life. I'm going to have to live knowing that I betrayed the person who loved me the most, who made the most sacrifices for me. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I'm more sorry than words can express. I closed my eyes, tears running down my face again. Do you really mean it, or do you only mean it because you got caught? There was a long silence. Both, he finally admitted, and that brutal honesty hurt and relieved me at the same time. I'd like to say I would have eventually seen my mistake, but I don't know. Maybe I never would have woken up if you hadn't stopped me. The lawyer says they're probably going to offer me a plea deal, he continued. Probation, restitution, community service. I'm going to accept it. I'm going to give you back every cent of what we sold, Mom. Even if it takes me years, I'm going to pay every person who bought your things and get them back, and I'm going to get therapy. I need to understand how I became this. Andrew had mentioned that this could happen, that Robert might try to make amends. He had warned me not to make any hasty decisions, to let the legal process run its course. Robert, I need time, I said finally. I need time to process all of this, to heal. I don't know if I can ever fully forgive you. I don't know if our relationship can recover from this. I understand, he replied. I understand completely. I just wanted you to know that I'm going to do everything I can to repair the damage. And if one day, even if it's in many years, you find a little space in your heart to see me as your son again, I'll be the luckiest man in the world. He hung up before I could reply, leaving me with the phone in my hand and a shattered heart. The following months were a slow recovery. The buyers, one by one, returned the things they had purchased. Some were ashamed, others outraged that they had been deceived. I recovered my curtains, my books, some of the decorative figurines. The jewelry was harder. Chelsea had sold them to a pawn shop that had already resold them, but Robert, true to his word, bought similar pieces to replace them. They weren't the same. They never would be, but the gesture meant something. Chelsea was sentenced to 3 years in prison for aggravated fraud and multiple counts of forgery. Her gambling addiction was documented during the trial, and the judge had no mercy. Robert received 2 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, and an order to pay full restitution. He was also ordered to attend mandatory therapy. The divorce was finalized quickly. Chelsea didn't fight it. She was too busy fighting her own legal battles. 6 months after that awful afternoon that changed everything, I sat in my backyard with a hot cup of coffee, watching the sunrise paint the sky orange and pink. The house was silent, but it was a different silence from the one I'd felt during those dark days. It was no longer the silence of betrayal and fear. It was the silence of peace, earned with tears and pain. But peace, at last. I had made changes. I changed all the locks, of course. I installed a complete security system with cameras that I could monitor from my phone. Andrew helped me draft a solid will with clear instructions about my wishes for when I was gone. My house would go to Marianne, my sister, with the instruction to sell it and donate half the money to organizations that helped victims of elder abuse. The other half would be for her. Robert did not appear in the will. That had been the hardest decision of my life, but a necessary one. It wasn't revenge, it was protection. Protection to ensure that if anything happened to me, my life, my work, my sacrifices would not end up benefiting someone who had tried to take everything away from me. Maybe one day that would change, maybe, but today, at this moment, it was the right decision. Evelyn had become more than just my neighbor. She was my friend, my confidant, my chosen sister. We had coffee together every morning, shared dinners on Fridays, went to painting classes on Wednesdays. She had shown me that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who choose to stay when everything collapses, when it would be easier to walk away. Marianne came to visit me once a month. We had reconnected in a way we hadn't managed in years. She had been there throughout the legal process, holding my hand, wiping my tears, reminding me that I wasn't alone. "You are stronger than you think," she always told me. And slowly, very slowly, I started to believe her. The community had also surprised me. After the story came out, neighbors I barely knew started reaching out. Some shared their own stories of family betrayal, others simply offered their support. They invited me to dinners, included me in the neighborhood activities, made sure I never felt isolated. I discovered there was more kindness in the world than I had imagined. As for Robert, well, that was the complicated part. He was religiously complying with his probation. Every month I received a check from him, paying me back little by little. It never came with a note, just the check. I learned through Andrew that he was working 2 jobs, living in a small apartment, attending therapy 3 times a week. He was rebuilding his life from scratch. 3 months ago, I received a letter from him. Not an email, not a text message. A handwritten letter on letterhead paper, like the ones his father used to write me when he traveled for work. I kept it unopened for 2 weeks. Finally, one lonely night, I gathered the courage to read it. It wasn't an apology exactly, it was more of an accountability. He wrote about the therapy sessions, about how he was starting to understand the behavior patterns that had led him to that point, about how Chelsea had been manipulative, yes, but he had chosen to believe her because it was easier than facing his own failures. He wrote about how remembering his father hurt him now in a way he had never experienced before because he finally understood the magnitude of what he had betrayed. "Dad worked until his last days to give you that house," he wrote, "to give us a safe home, and I was willing to tear it away from you just to save my own skin. There are no words in any language that can express how ashamed I am of that. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Mom. I just needed you to know that I finally see it. I finally see the monster I became. I didn't reply to that letter, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know what to say. How do you forgive the unforgivable? How do you rebuild a relationship that was so completely shattered? My therapist, a wise woman named Elvira, whom I had started seeing after all this, told me there was no rush, that forgiveness was not something I owed anyone, not even my own son, that I could heal without forgiving, and that forgiving didn't mean forgetting or allowing him to hurt me again. I took another sip of coffee, watching as the sun finally broke completely over the horizon. I thought of the woman I'd been 6 months ago, scared, betrayed, questioning every decision I had made as a mother. And I thought of the woman I was now, stronger, that was for sure, more cautious too, but also more connected to the world, more aware of my own worth. I had learned that setting boundaries wasn't cruelty, that protecting myself wasn't selfishness, that I could love my son and still deny him access to my life if that access harmed me. These were lessons I wish I had learned decades ago, but better late than never. My house, my beautiful house, which had been in danger of being lost, felt like a home again. I had redecorated a few rooms, not to erase the memories, but to create new ones. I converted the guest room into an art studio where I painted watercolors every afternoon. I wasn't good, but it didn't matter. It was therapeutic, it was mine, and that was enough. I'd also started volunteering with an organization that helped elderly victims of financial abuse. I shared my story, not with shame, but with purpose. If my pain could help someone else recognize the warning signs, to have the courage to defend themselves, then something good would have come out of all of this. Every person I helped, every story I listened to reminded me that I wasn't alone, that elder abuse was more common than people wanted to admit. I stood up, stretching, feeling my old joints protest slightly. 62 years old. Chelsea had used my age as a weapon, as evidence that I was useless, that I needed to be controlled, but I had proven the opposite. I had fought, I had won, and I was still here living on my own terms. As I walked back toward the house, my phone rang. It was a text message from Robert, the first in 6 months. My finger hovered over the notification for a long moment. Finally, I opened it. Mom, I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but if you're ever ready, even if it's just for coffee and a talk, I'll be waiting. I love you. I will always love you and always regret what I did. I looked at the message for a long time. I didn't reply, not yet. Talvez someday I would be ready for that coffee, for that conversation. Maybe someday I could look my son in the eyes without feeling the pang of betrayal's pain. Maybe, but that day wasn't today, and I was at peace with that. I walked into my house, and closed the door behind me. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the paintings on the walls, the figurines on the shelves, the books neatly organized, everything in its place, everything as it should be. I had survived the worst betrayal imaginable and had come out the other side, not just intact, but transformed. I served myself another cup of coffee and sat in my favorite chair, the one I had saved from the illegal sale, and I smiled, a small but genuine smile, because I had learned the most important lesson of all, that my worth didn't depend on being needed, that my purpose didn't end when my children grew up, that I had the right to take up space in this world, to defend what was mine, to live with dignity until my last breath. And if someone tried to take that away from me again, well, now I knew exactly what to do. One single call, that's all it took. One single call to put people in their place, to uphold what was just, to remind them that older people are not easy targets. We are survivors, we are warriors, and we don't give up without a fight.